This unit's going to cover immunology. Immunology is study of the immune system. And it's one of the more difficult sections you can study in a microbiology course. A lot of detail to it. It's actually an entire course in itself. If you go to a university, you can take a 16-week course in immunology. And there are other parts of classes such as pathogenic microbiology, pathology, which is an entire course that would deal with this also. So I'm going to start here first. Now, in the entry video for this section, I went through the two videos. I posted two videos from War of the Worlds under the videos for lecture in this section. And I'm going to have, this video is there, of course, but please watch those other two. And I went in that description in the other video. But it's really interesting, and it basically deals with the fact that aliens arrived on our planet and they had no immune system or no immunity to our little microbes, and they were just destroying humans everywhere. And in the end, the microbes ended up, causing them trouble. It's a really smart, well-written book, and that book was written in the late 1800s. So, okay, here's a definition for immunity. Immunology would be the study of the immune system, but immunity is referring to the ability of an organism to defend itself against invasion from other microorganisms. Or you could even say from other organisms. A pathogen causes disease only if it can gain access by either going across skin, and we'll get to this. Skin is basically a barrier that cannot be penetrated by microbes unless it's broken, or gain access through one of the body systems that opens to the outside: digestive, respiratory, genital urinary, any of those. So we're going to start here first. You can divide immunity into two sections: innate immunity, nonspecific immunity. It's almost referring to yourself. What nonspecific means, it's always the same, and it's not necessarily even it's not a specific immunity at all. Stomach acid is always the same. It doesn't change to fight different things. Stomach acid is there for digestion purposes, but it's very inhospitable to microbes. Now, I did post, you have a regular PowerPoint that's got some really good pictures, and I'll bounce back and forth on that one. And then you have one, I posted two from our old textbook, and it's got some really good detail for this section. And great pictures like that. That's actually skin. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to make 3 videos with this section, and I'll try to keep them short. Now, the body's first line of defense. There are what are called mechanical barriers, and then what are called chemical barriers. And the first line of defense, of course, meaning they're the first thing that a microbe's going to come in contact with. Now, what you usually hear is skin is the first line of defense, and it is. It's a living layer. It's got a top layer of dead cells and an active layer underneath that is replacing the dead cells. So it's really difficult for microbes to cross that. In fact, they cannot. And skin is also acidic. There's also sweat glands that are constantly bathing skin. Skin also has oil glands. We'll get to that, sebaceous glands, and oil is antimicrobial. But while we're talking about skin, so let me bounce over here. So here is a good picture of, and that's a super thick layer. This is probably a foot. But see this top layer on the top? That's the top. Skin is always being sloughed off, meaning it's coming off the body. The top layers of the skin, the epidermis, are dead. And you can actually see the big gap right there. Now, starting right here with these colors, and this is actually a foot, all these layers are dead. Skin is not quite that thick everywhere else in the body. Otherwise, we would look like the Thing from the Fantastic Four. But skin has 4 layers everywhere else but the hands and feet, where it's pretty thick, and it has 5 layers. But the very bottom is down here. And that bottom layer is undergoing mitosis, and it's adding these layers on top. Now, I said this is the top layer. This is skin ultra magnified. And it says 40 microns, which is, it says a scanning electron microscope. But look at that. It's dry, like it is dry. It's these are dead cells. So it is dry, but skin does have a layer of oil. And like I was saying, it has sweat, and it is acidic. So skin is not hospitable. And there are flora that already live there, and you pick up flora during the day. And yes, sometimes skins get infected, but skin is the first barrier against everything. Mucous membranes. Now, those are things that line every body system that open to the outside. And you know what? Somewhere, in fact, I'm going to post this diagram. I love this diagram. It's showing there's sweat, low pH for skin, but do you see here's the respiratory system, genital, urinary, digestive is also mouth through anus. But yeah, anything, the only other way to get inside the body through there, and mucous membranes line every major body system that open to the outside. And mucus is sticky. It has antibodies that are embedded in the mucus, and so they are considered, I know it's the second part of the first line of defense, but skin is technically your first barrier, and then you kind of go from there. So there it is. So skin, mucous membranes, and then secretions of skin and mucous membranes. Now, these are other things that are considered the first line of defense. You just don't hear about them. Sebum, and that's actually a sebaceous gland. Well, this is a goblet cell, but see this layer of oil on top? Same thing. Sebum would make, and these are cilia, but this is a great picture to show. It says trapped particles of mucus. There's a layer of oil on top of the skin. And sebum is antimicrobial. It's got a high concentration of fatty acids. Lysozyme is an enzyme found in saliva. And I want to say on our other diagram here, you can see here it says tears, lysozyme, saliva, lysozyme. Lysozyme breaks down bacteria cell walls. It acts very similar to penicillin. Perspiration, constantly washing skin. It also contains salt, antimicrobial peptides, defensins. What defensins do, they poke holes in the cell walls of microbes. Gastric juice, like I was saying, low pH, hydrochloric acid has a pH of 1. Very few things can survive stomach acid. They do exist. The H. pylori bacteria, which causes stomach ulcers, can survive an acid, but nothing else really can. Transferrin, a substance that transports iron in blood. And what's interesting about that, now I'll add this, okay? During a fever, transferrin binds to iron in blood. It sequesters it. And bacteria need iron to go through their cell divisions and their growth cycle. So that's a really important part of the whole immune response. Normal flora, we kind of covered this. The body is covered, well, we covered this in lab a little bit. Normal flora are the microbes that are present on skin and even internal organs, everything. And they're a normal part of skin, well, like I said, body systems, everything. And they actually take up oxygen food, and they help prevent other microbes, transient ones, pathogens, from being able to move into an area and start growing. So they're actually beneficial. Okay, and then plasma. The thing about plasma, it has an area that it has proteins inside that are called complement and some others that are involved with the immune response. So all of these are considered the first line of defense, or what are called nonspecific defense, and so is the ones I'm about to talk to as well. Talk about as well. In fact, I think what I'm going to do, let me see here. Well, let's start this, and then I'll finish this in the second video. So the body's second line of defense. If something gets across the skin or gets inside the body through one of the major organ systems, then there is what is called a second line of defense. It's like a video game. If you make it through the first level, you made it to the second level. Phagocytes are huge. Antimicrobial chemicals and things like inflammation and fever. Complement is one of those, it's not a chemical, they're proteins, but they're part of the second line of defense. Okay, white blood cells. Now, I gave you a diagram, and it looks like it's this one. It's posted on the immunity page, just right down there. It says white blood cells. Here are 5 categories. Now, it's not all of them, but these over here are called granulocytes, and the ones here are agranulocytes. This is actually a basophil. It's not the greatest one because they look like a bunch of blue dots. This is an eosinophil. This is a neutrophil on the bottom, and then here is a monocyte, and then here is a lymphocyte. Now, neutrophils and monocytes, which are bigger, they're phagocytes. They eat cells. So they're a huge role in this. But granulocytes have granules in their cytoplasm. If you didn't notice that. See the little dots, the red dots for the eosinophils, the bluish ones for basophils, and then kind of pinkish for neutrophils. It may look like dots in here, but they're not granules. These are why they're called agranulocytes. And a lymphocyte barely has any cytoplasm. And we'll get to lymphocytes in the 3rd video. Okay, neutrophils, they are phagocytes. And it says they can exit the bloodstream to attack invading microbes. They are phagocytes. That first picture in our lecture classroom PowerPoint, those are neutrophils. See, they're eating the green bacteria. So they're little Pac-Man cells. And they're the most abundant. They're the first ones to arrive. Eosinophils can also break down pathogens. I'm going to add something to that. They're more involved with parasitic worm infections. Basophils are involved with the inflammation process. Excuse me, with the inflammatory response. Now the agranulocytes, we'll get to lymphocytes. They're part of what is called specific immunity, B cells and T cells. B cells produce antibodies. T cells directly attack foreign antigen. They're 80% of what is called adaptive immunity. Adaptive meaning these are very specific. They are going to attack specific things. Neutrophils, neutrophils and monocytes and the others, they're not specific. That's why they're part of the second line of defense. They're still considered nonspecific. If an eosinophil doesn't recognize you, that's what's going to happen. And this right here, that's actually showing a monocyte. Well, that looks like a neutrophil actually, but see how they're moving out. And monocytes do this more than neutrophils, but they can move to areas where there's an infection in tissue. Let me see if I have another. Yeah, leukocytes, and there's the same. And there's another picture. So monocyte, that looks like a lymphocyte. That's a neutrophil. They're kind of bigger. An eosinophil, there's a basophil. And then platelets, red blood cells. There's the eosinophils. Basophils cause swelling. There's some more monocytes. There's a lymphocyte, and there's a monocyte. And it looks like it's showing here. Now, phagocytosis, see this thing eating another cell? And there's actually a great video of that.
Neutrophils are white blood cells that hunt and kill bacteria. In this spread, a neutrophil is seen in the midst of red blood cells. Staphylococcus aureus bacteria have been added. The small clump of bacteria release a chemoattractant that is sensed by the neutrophil. The neutrophil becomes polarized and starts chasing the bacteria. The bacteria, bounced around by thermal energy, move in a random path, seeming to avoid their predator. Eventually, the neutrophil catches up with the bacteria and engulfs them by phagocytosis.
Monocytes and neutrophils are phagocytes. Phagocytosis is the process of cell eating, and you actually have to know the parts of this. Yeah, phagocytic defense cells of the body. They're Pac-Man cells. They eat other cells, and you saw that in that video. The neutrophil chasing the microbe down. So there are stages to it. Basically, when a phagocyte engulfs another cell, and this is a crazy looking picture, but this is supposed to be something like a monocyte. I know it doesn't look like our little pictures, but see how it's all ruffled. And then here it has inheritance, and then it has something phagocyte to microbe. And basically, here it is swallowing the microbe here. So ingested in microbes by phagocytes. So a phagocyte engulfs a microorganism. A vesicle forms around the microorganism, and you can see that there. And it has a name. It's called a phagosome. Lysosomes, if you remember from the other unit, lysosomes have digestive enzymes that break down foreign particles, microorganisms, and food particles. Well, lysozymes move in here and they attach to that vesicle, that part called a phagosome, and it forms what is called a phagolysosome complex. And at that point, the lysosome releases the digestive enzymes, and then it breaks down basically the microbe, and then the remnants, or the parts, like it says there, are eliminated by what is called exocytosis. When a cell releases something to the outside, it's called exocytosis. Okay, I'm going to start here next.